Hi all, I have another interesting game to show you from the World Championship candidates. Levon Aronian playing white against Sergey Karjakin. Let's have a look at this game. c4 from Levon Aronian. The English opening, knight f6, knight f3, e6. So black is wanting to challenge the d5 square or occupy it. g3, d5, bishop g2. And now d takes c4. So in one sense you could say this is materialistic, but it's actually annoying for white to try and regain this pawn. It can be, the queen can come out to regain this pawn, but there'll be some tempo gaining for black quite often. And after check c6, queen takes c4, black does take the opportunity for a tempo gaining move, b5, which automatically provides a square for the bishop on b7 potentially. And in fact that's used immediately. Bishop b7, white castles, bishop e7, d4, black castles, rook d1, knight bd7, knight e5. That's actually taken, even though it looks a little bit scary in some respects, to give white what looks to be quite an aggressive pawn marking the d6 square. But black here seems solid enough after knight d7. There's nothing too exploitable right now. So white does have the extra space though. Bishop f4, celebrating that advanced pawn. Queen c7, knight d2. And there's also the e4 square. So at the moment it looks pretty rosy for white. He couldn't have thought the position's that bad at all at the moment. And black also doesn't have too many major issues, although this c pawn on the semi-open file looks like a little bit potentially scary. We have rook fd8, rook ac1, a6. The thing is, black with the queen on b3 can potentially play for c5. There's nothing locking down c5 here. And in fact, queen e3, we see c5 now, and challenging white's bishop here. Bishop takes b7, queen takes. This does weaken white's squares a little bit. So black now, if you look at this position, there's a 3-2 pawn majority over here. There's double pawns in the centre here, but does white have some sort of attacking prospect? White does use that e4 square. And now c4, h4, h6, rook d4, as though white's going to do something with the d file. White cannot just do a hack attack here. The knight's being eyed on e4, so there's no possibility yet of sacking a piece. It's pretty unsound, as you might expect. Rook d4, knight f8, so black's playing a seemingly defensive game here, but looking forward to perhaps in the end games, the 3-2 pawn majority. b3, we have one pair of rooks coming off, rook d8, knight d6, and in fact more simplification now. Black gives white an even more advanced pawn on d6, f6 with the big threat of e5 now, which would be winning a piece. White has to do something about that. Bishop e3, e5 is played anyway, queen b2. Now if black took on d6, then we have of course b takes c4 with that pin there. This is actually quite nice for white. Black actually left the pawn for a moment, and queen c6 just unpinning the b pawn. We have now b takes, queen b4 protecting d6. And so if rook takes d6 here, this wasn't played, rook c8 was played. If rook takes d6, it's not actually this would be a disaster. Check. And mate, no, that's not the idea. No, the idea here, it seems, would be bishop c5 to force through here now. Bishop takes f8 to get the rook off the d file first, then to take on c4, and might be having a small edge. So queen b4, clever move. Rook c8. We have f3, so locking down that diagonal. h5, king f2, king f7. The king is pretty adventurous, you might think here. What's the king doing here with king f7? rook d1, knight d7, keeping a blockade on the d6 pawn, queen b1. There might be queen h7 potentially. That's stopped. g6, g4, as though trying to open this diagonal. Is it a little bit double-edged potentially? Black just plays rook h8 here, and then we have another move going forward. Is this leaving this pawn behind a bit weak potentially in an endgame? We have f5. White is marking some dark squares here. This could be dangerous potentially. These fawn pawns. Queen c2, rook c8, queen c3, and now this looks like a little bit surprising. King e6, king's visiting the center. We're not playing a chess variant here. The king doesn't have to grab go first to the center or something, but okay, it's safe enough here though, it seems. King g2, and now queen a4, starting to put a little bit of pressure on white. The a2 pawn, the little a2 pawn over there, that's protected. Queen b5, a4, trying to play for queen d5 checkmate. So whoever takes, yeah, queen d5 looks pretty much like checkmate. So the queen's got a guard d5, queen c2, rook b8, with the idea of rook b3 now to try and maybe hit this pawn again. Bishop d2 is played, which looks pretty logical actually. It sometimes supports bishop c3, and then if white wants to do something with these dark squares, you know, that would be quite interesting to have the bishop on that diagonal. Rook b3. Is it that interesting to play the bishop to c3 now? Because isn't rook b3 introducing queen takes a4? The thing is, rook b3 also eyes f3, and there's a bit of coordination here. And I believe Levon Aronian, I suspect he might not have been an entirely happy player at this point in the tournament, after taking 4 losses up to here, and maybe, you know, his dream of winning the tournament was kind of over. This does seem like a little bit of a mistake, this move, which he plays. He actually plays bishop c3. Now, he may have believed that if he just moves the pawn, this looks like a good way of keeping the pawn protected. There's a few things going on here. First, I think it's a little bit too dangerous to take on d6. Black's king's going to be massacred, and things like queen c4 check anyway. But the point here is maybe e4 is scary to face. It does sort of puncture the f3 square. You can see the rook on b3 and the queen on c6 conspiring here, but it does seem as though white should have at least 2 ways to play this. F takes, for example, taking here, this position seems plausible, but black might actually be doing quite well here. It's easier to play for black, but technically it's an even position. And there's also another way to play this. Instead of f takes e4, if in this event of a5 e4, so bishop c3 here, and take this e takes f3, because the bishop's blunting the rook at the moment. Now knight e5, there's actually an important resource here for white, which means that black isn't just easily winning this. If white just meekly protects the pawn, the knight d3 looks extremely nasty, jumping into potentially f4 later. But there's actually a resource here which needs to be seen. Can you spot it if you were playing white? What would you play? Sorry, after knight e5, yeah. So f3's attack. There's a great resource here, a little bit maybe unexpected, but it does use white's assets, trump cards, to sort of cleverly defend this pawn. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play in this position? Okay, queen e2, it turns out it's possible, even though it seems to drop the bishop. If takes, we have d7, yeah, this pawn is the trump card here, saves the day, and in fact white will have a big advantage, queening the exchange up. So it does seem like this method is maybe preferable, just to play bishop c3 on this event. But yeah, this does require kind of, let's have a look at this again for a moment. It does look pretty scary on f3. You can see that 3 of black's pieces are conspiring on f3. But yeah, but it just seems queen e2 is fine. Okay, so unfortunately, yeah, bishop c3 immediately does seem to leave the a4 pawn hanging. So it doesn't seem like there's too much poison associated with this, because white's pieces don't seem in such a great way to attack the black king. So this is actually snatched. We have rook a1, and the queen drops back to c6, rook a5, rook b5, queen a4. Now knight b6 hitting the queen, queen a1. The pair of rooks come off here, queen b5. White plays now d7. Yeah, this pawn's got to be stopped. I mean, it's got to be taken here, because otherwise this looks like it's too dangerous. So it's actually taken with the king, and we have queen a3 with the idea of trying to come into the position on the dark squares. Knight d5 hits the bishop and offers the e5 pawn, so pretty clever move overall. Bishop takes e5. Yeah, this looks like a really interesting point where knight d5 giving up e5. But black really is interested in pushing his trump card here. So this does seem to solve a lot of the problems. So giving up e5. We have now queen c6. So black's ready to drive through the pawn, but queen f8, queen e6, queen b8, c3, check, king e8, check. There's a lot of checks here. Knight now check here, knight e7, and in fact wanting to give up the c3 pawn to win e2. That's the transaction now. Now queen b5, queen c7, queen c6, and that hits f3 as well as the queen. Yeah, this doesn't look particularly good, this ending. Can you imagine this ending with the outside pass pawn? It's only black that's playing for a win. So we have actually queen e5 dropping f3, which doesn't look a very pleasant thing to do. Because now after the check, we also now have king h1 dropping h4. It seems as though maybe f4 here is plausible with the king. If the king can escape the checks, then queen g3 is coming. So that looks like bad news indeed. So anyway, but it's a bad news position in any case, with h4 dropping now and g5. This is not exactly what white would have wanted. Check from the opening. Queen e4. There's a few checks now, but and threats, but they're parried. Knight d5, bishop e2, f4, which protects g6. King h2, king f5, check. King g5, check. King g4, check. King h4, bishop g7. Now it's black's turn. Check, check, check. And here actually white resigned. It is clearly not great with things like f3 or even potentially knight e3. Yeah, it's all over, of course, here. So yeah, it wasn't the most inspiring game by Levon Aronian, but we're just human. We're all human, and we don't play optimally when we're downhearted, generally speaking. I know from my own chess that it becomes less creative and less enthusiastic, more like torture if one is having a bad losing streak or something. So okay, but I thought, because it's a decisive game we haven't covered, might as well check it out just for completeness. I think we've nearly covered all the decisive games of the candidates. I'll do a quick check just to make sure, and and maybe do one conclusion or video or something after. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this coverage so far. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.